Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of Prime Life. So, Mary, do you want to do the intro?
Absolutely. I'm super excited. Erin Albert, Vice President of Pharmacy Relations at Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drug Company, PBC. She's both a pharmacist and an attorney, and author of a dozen books, serving also as president of the American Society for Pharmacy Law, and she's a podcaster. I mean, what else? Welcome. And I would love to have you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and, you know, your journey as to how you became involved with this company and what you're doing for folks.
Sure. Well, thank you for that introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. You are my people, because we were just talking off recording about how this is crunch time, fourth quarter, right? And 70% of commercial healthcare plans in the U.S. change on 1/1. So, if we could dedicate this particular episode to all the hardworking people in insurance out there who make sure your cards work when you hit the pharmacy on 1/1, we salute you in particular right now. So my little journey in finding Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs as Vice President of Pharmacy Relations actually started much where you all operate. I was working for a mid-level broker advisor here in central Indiana in the Midwest. And we were heading on down to fourth quarter. And what happens a lot in drug benefits is that manufacturers oftentimes will change either their patient assistance programs or their copay assistance programs, usually in the fourth quarter prior to the new plan year. And that happened actually last year. In my role, I was trying to find low-cost solutions around a drug called imatinib. And imatinib is a chemotherapy. It's oftentimes used long-term in patients. And we had some patients that were on high-deductible healthcare plans. They were rolling into the new plan year, and we were panicking because manufacturer assistance was being cut off or cut away from the brand drug there. So I stumbled upon costplusdrugs.com and found an incredible price on imatinib. Subsequently, we've actually even lowered the price on imatinib. But I reached out to the team here at Mark Cuban and just started the conversation from the advisor broker role, of which, you all kind of sit in that. I was trying to find solutions for our members and patients and plans for cost effectiveness, but to also make sure that patients stay on their therapy. If they can't afford it, they're not going to stay on it. So that's how I found Mark Cuban, and we just kept having the conversation. And Ron Harrison, who's our Vice President of Business Development, just pulled me aside at a separate meeting and said, "Hey, we need a PharmD JD." And I was like, okay. So that's kind of how it happened. And even today, in my role here, which is changing, we're a scrappy little startup. We have 25, 30 employees. A lot of people think that we are this, 65,000 pound gorilla with all the things that we've been doing, but we're actually still very much in startup mode. So the day-to-day changes here very rapidly, but as we move forward into the new plan year for 2023, we're dealing a lot with requests very similar to the same situation I was in a year ago, with pharmacists coming to us and saying, hey, this manufacturer's cutting back on this coupon. We've got a ton of patients and members on a high deductible plan. Can you help us out for the new plan year? So I'm excited to be a part of that on this side of the fence now, so I can help those pharmacists and those benefit advisors find the most cost-effective solutions right here in America, by the way. I have strong opinions about things like Canadian importation, et cetera, as a pharmacist. But I'm really, really thrilled to be part of a great team, and we work very hard each and every day to find the lowest cost medications that we can for our patients, but also with the lens of quality and safety.
Okay, I've got to ask the dumb question, which is, why are the drugs so expensive in the U.S.? Why can you, like you say, why could you go to Canada and get apparently the same drugs at a lower price? Assume I don't know much.
So that's a very complex and great question, and I'm glad you asked, and it'd probably take me a whole hour to unpack all the reasons why. I think some of the top line reasons, number one, is our government until recently did not negotiate on drug prices. So we are one of the few countries on the planet that don't really negotiate drug pricing at least federal government level. That's an issue. Number two, we still allow direct-to-consumer advertising in this U.S. country that we have. The only other country on the planet right now that still allows that, I believe, is New Zealand. So when you have DTC advertising, while that's great, you're empowering the patient with information, the challenge associated with that, too, is it drives up the cost of prescription drugs. Also, kind of unique to America is the Pharmacy Benefit Manager, or PBM, and I'm sure we've heard all about them in the press. The Federal Trade Commission is looking at their habits and practices. We've partnered with, and I'm an advocate for some of the PBMs. I think some of the PBMs are actually doing great work. They're very innovative, and they're balancing the needs of the individual patients with the self-funded plan payments in particular. I think there needs to be a balance there, right? So some of the PBMs have put into place borderline egregious ways of making money. They have over 40, 50 different ways that they make money. And, the thing that I love, one of the things I love most about Mark Cuban Cost Plus is we are fully transparent. And I know from the broker advisor world, that word has been abused, right? Everybody says they're transparent, but walking the talk is something completely different, right? So we post our actual acquisition costs, what our company or public benefit corporation pays for those prescription drugs. We put a 15% markup on it, a $3 dispensing fee, and $5 for shipping. And you would be shocked at how complex that simplicity is to explain to a marketplace that has been convoluted with some of the larger PBM practices. So in a nutshell, I think those are some of the key drivers. And again, I could talk all day about that, but I think those are some of kind of the major touch points as to why prescription drugs are so expensive in the U.S.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
You packed a lot into that answer.
Yes.
There's about 5 or 6 questions in there, I'm sure. So, Erin, I mentioned earlier that we collaborate with Mark Cuban Cost Plus Drugs, which is great for consumers to save money on their drugs. Can you talk a little bit about the types of drugs that you cover? I know it's not all, but I know that. I don't know if our listeners know the types of drugs you cover and how you described a little bit about how it works, but maybe just elaborate a little.
Sure. So we're working very hard every day to add more drugs to costplusdrugs.com. You can just simply go to the website and you can either search by therapeutic category the drugs that you're looking for, or you can just type in the drug name and it'll pop up if we have it. Right now, we are around 800, 1,000 different SKUs of the 20,000 prescription drugs that are on the marketplace at any one point in time. We're trying to, get more and more as we go on. Recently, we just announced our first ever brand team up with Roche Diabetes Care on some of their meters, test strips, and Lancets as well. So we were very excited about that. It's really easy to use us. I mean, a lot of folks, if you just go out to Twitter and follow us at Cost Plus Drugs, you'll see a lot of love out there for patients that, even with great commercial plans, their copays are actually higher than buying the drugs outright and paying cash from Cost Plus Drugs. I think one of our unique Niches might be those higher cost, not so much specialty drugs because they're still oral formulations, but those drugs that may have just recently, for example, gone off patent and only have a few generic competitors out there. Our procurement team works really hard to get the best price in the marketplace for drugs like the imatinibs of the world, so we can find affordable solutions for those patients that need them the most. And the worst thing is to have no options. So we're working every day to get more and more drugs into our DTC portal at Cost Plus, and a year from now, it could be a very different number that I'm throwing out. But right now, I think we're chugging along, considering we just started back in January of this year.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the cost savings piece, because that's a message I've been pounding away on the Medicare side. You could probably, in many cases, save more money going direct to Cost Plus drugs versus going through a plan. You have to do the math. You have to look at the prescriptions and do the analysis, but there's an opportunity to potentially save money.
Really? It's that.
Yeah, and you really have to be a savvy shopper. Sorry to interrupt, but one of the things as a pharmacist that I put my hat on is educating not only patients, but even other healthcare providers on how to shop for medications. This is not, go to Amazon and plug in a drug and you're done. You need to understand, are you on a brand or generic drug? Are you on a drug that is mandated by a commercial plan under the Affordable Care Act to be covered at $0? If so, you should use your plan for that, right? If you are on a brand drug, is there a manufacturer copay assistance card for you? Is there a free trial program regardless of insurance? Is there a bridge program available for that drug while it's being considered under prior authorization? And last but not least, if you have no options, maybe that brand drug has a manufacturer patient assistance or advocacy program where you can qualify potentially to get that drug for a huge discount or free. So there's a range of options. I didn't even talk about like the Good RXs or the Single Cares of the world. Those are other types of coupons as well. So I personally am not much of a shopper, but I can tell you everything and every place you need to go and look when it comes to prescription drug shopping, because it's super complicated, even with insurance.
So you mentioned that actually used the words a scrappy startup to describe the team. And I'm curious, you're accomplishing a lot. It sounds like it's a smaller group of individuals with a very large, important mission. After joining the team for a bit, what is it that you think helps you stand out in terms of the success? Is it the marketing, is it the transparency, the individuals you've surrounded yourself with on that team? Is it the uniqueness of everything that you're doing that's helping you be this successful? What do you think that would be?
That's a great question. I think it's probably everything from, Mr. Cuban himself, he likes to joke, it's not cost plus mugs, it's cost plus drugs. So we don't have a budget for marketing. He has flat out and publicly stated we are not dumping a bunch of money into marketing with this organization. I mean, I joke that he puts the mark in marketing for us, right?
Nice.
So I think that kind of entrepreneurial, Shark Tanky, scrappy startup culture is really, really intrinsic in our group. Our CEO, Dr. Alex Oshmiansky, is a great guy. You don't want to be on the other side of the negotiating table with Dr. Alex when he's fighting for patients, because it's like, stand back. He is very passionate about ensuring that we get the lowest cost drug that we can for the patients who need it most, because we're here representing them. Whether it's somebody without insurance, whether it's somebody on a high deductible healthcare plan. I'm on an HDHP myself, so I want Dr. Alex, and our cost plus team fighting to make sure that we have the lowest cost option. So I think it's that scrappy entrepreneurial culture that's kind of embedded with our group. I also think it's just, do more with less, right? A lot of us actually had entrepreneurial backgrounds prior to coming to Mark Cuban. And, there's something special and unique about the scrappy startup entrepreneurs. And I myself was an accidental entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs. My grandparents were entrepreneurs. And even though I'm a first generation college graduate in my own family, I'm a third or fourth generation entrepreneur. So I think, I don't, it's always debated in the academic world where I taught, in a school of pharmacy for 10 years. Can you teach entrepreneurship, or is it just embedded or ingrained in the individuals? And I think it could be a mixture of both. So I think that's the special ingredient that we have at Cost Plus, that scrappy, can do, will get it done, do what it takes to get it done to represent best for our patients.
Yeah, sorry, I'm asking another, this will be such a basic question. The model you describe, Erin, sounds simple. It sounds like Costco. Sounds like Sam's Club. Wait a second. Why haven't they done this? Why haven't these box companies already taken over the space and done exactly what you're doing?
Well, we aren't the first to do an acquisition cost-based model. I'm sure we won't be the last, which is great news for me as a pharmacist. I like to have competition out there in the world. And I think what happens oftentimes, and Mr. Cuban's talked about this himself, is that once you are a viable competitor in a cost-plus model, particularly in pharma, you get bought out quickly, acquired. And the big conglomerates, the big vertically integrated healthcare systems in this country and companies, corporations, just absorb those. And it's game over then, right? But Mr. Cuban, I think, is in it for the long haul. I mean, he said publicly he will not sell out. So I like that. I love that, we're not the only pharmacy doing this model, but having, Mr. Cuban as one of our spokespeople, I think carries a lot of weight. There was a statistic 1 in 17 Americans have heard of us thus far, I think, or 17% of Americans have heard of us thus far, which just blows my mind considering we spent a big old goose egg on marketing. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see. I don't know what our competition thinks of us, but we're so busy over here trying to help our patients out that I'm thrilled that we have, Mr. Cuban with his own name on our business, Dr. Alex with his passion for patient care. He still practices as a radiologist every weekend himself. So I think with that kind of team, I think we're here to stay.
Yeah,
or at least I hope.
Well, and let me ask you the other side of the coin, which is, wow, you just started out. I'm looking at the prices on your website. It's retail price $2,502. I can get it for $14.40 at your site. Now, if you scale, fast forward 5 years, 71% of the country, knows about you.
I have a clarifying question from earlier. Can a consumer just go on the site and order, or do they need to somehow have their doctor place that order with the prescription?
Yeah, so how that works is, of course, in all 50 states, you need a prescription from your doctor to order the prescriptions at costplusdrugs.com. So all you need to tell your doctor, call your doctor and just say, Mark Cuban Cost Plus, I'd like my prescription sent there. We are in all the electronic health record systems now under that name. And all they have to do is go into their EHR, type in the prescriptions, and shoot them off to our pharmacy fulfillment partner, TruePill. It's all electronic. Optionally, in those rural communities where they might not have an Epic or a Cerner platform, the physician can either call TruePill directly and just call in the prescriptions, or they can fax them in. But I would say the overwhelming majority do e-prescribing these days.
Did you say fax? You still use
I did, believe it or not. Everybody's like, who still uses a fax machine? I'm like, Alex says a radiologist still uses fax. A lot of pharmacies use fax for faxing prescriptions. There's certain types of prescriptions that are often, it lends well to faxing. So yeah, for those of us, that grew up with the Atari 2600, we're a little bit more familiar with the fax machine, but and a lot of the pharmacy fulfillment platforms actually have electronic integration of the fax machine, so you're not sitting there filling, that old paper. But yeah, fax is still pretty popular, especially for rural and underserved communities where they just don't have those sophisticated EHRs.
This is making me think about what else is possible, right? So the company is helping individuals who need this medication. It's positive impact. I would say near endless, right? But there's always an end to certain things. What other pieces of the landscape could this type of function be applied to? So, you're JD, you're a pharmacist, you're a podcast, you're an author. You've been exposed to, the largest parts of these landscapes. What other opportunities do you see out there for this type of business treatment, if you will? Like if you were to dream a big dream.
Well, I love futuristic stuff on StrengthsFinder. So, when you ask me questions like that, it's like, okay, how do I whittle this down without going on for 8 hours? I think, there's a lot of exciting opportunity. I think what's really interesting right now in the marketplace is kind of the bifurcation of product versus service. And so let me give you a recent example that's outside of medicine, and that's over-the-counter hearing aids, right? So they just went over the counter, which is great because it's going to lower the costs, right? On the other hand, there is a huge service component to hearing aids, checking them, cleaning them on a regular basis. So I think it'll be fascinating to see and watch in the marketplace what audiologists do if they are losing, that touch point of the product being out into the marketplace versus their services that are tied oftentimes to those products. So if you go get your hearing aid at Walmart, who's going to be the audiologist to check your hearing and or check the hearing aids, to clean them on a regular basis for you? So I think that's really interesting. And, coming back to pharma, I'm going to take off my Mark Cuban hat for a minute and put on my pharmacist hat for a second and answering this question, is that pharmacy as a profession has had some challenges right now. And one of the reasons why I personally believe they've had the challenges is they've been giving away cognitive services for a long time for free. And so I even put out a little, survey on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago and said, hey, if you are a patient or you're representing a patient, maybe your mom or your dad, if you're an adult or a child, what would you pay to get in front of a pharmacist to get your questions answered by skipping the queue? And surprisingly, a lot of people said, quite a bit of money to get, right in front of that pharmacist at a time. And you think about it, a lot of retail pharmacies right now are kind of crushed. You got a huge line of patients. The phone's ringing off the hook. There's 10 people going through the drive-through. They've got to give vaccines. They got to fill scripts. And so I see it as a huge opportunity where the pharmacist can start, and I've got opposing viewpoints within my profession, so I have to put that disclaimer out there. But I think there's a place for the fulfillment component of pharmacy, but also the cognitive services around pharmacy. Because it doesn't matter if you're getting one script here, one script there, but if mom or dad is on 10 or 15 medications, you need to have a pharmacist looking at the whole picture, not just that one prescription. So I think it's super exciting because there's a group of pharmacists out there that really want to just focus on those cognitive services, not counting by fives anymore. And we've got automation and robotics that can do that now, which is incredible. I mean, they can fill hundreds of prescriptions an hour. So what I foresee as a really exciting opportunity in all of healthcare, whether it's hearing aids or in our case, prescription drugs, is the opportunity for the services piece and the product piece sometimes being together or sometimes being segregated.
Yeah, and to your point, both of my sister-in-laws are pharmacists. And the amount of times that we called them during the process of my husband's aging grandparents going through, and it's, Bobchi is not acting right today. So, hey, Sarah, she's on A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and K. What could possibly be happening? And it's, the questions went back and forth. What's changed? Are the prescriptions different? And it's helped us tremendously. If we didn't have access to those individuals, I could be singing a very different story. So that is a tremendous asset. And having lived it firsthand, I would absolutely pay for that.
See, that's good. You're a customer already. And you brought up a really interesting point, because there's a whole movement, particularly with senior patients, on deprescribing.
Yes.
There comes a point where a 99-year-old may not need to take Lipitor anymore, as an example. So who's going to do that? Because if you're incentivized solely by selling that prescription, isn't that kind of a conflict of interest if you're telling, the 99-year-olds they don't need to be on the Lipitor anymore? So that's where I see the opportunity for bifurcating services versus the products being a win-win. Because if you bundle them together, you're immediately in a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So Erin, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary.
Erin, this is so funny. So I began many years ago. My first job was in a pharmacy, right? I wasn't obviously a pharmacist or an assistant, but back in the day, customers would come in and they would ask the pharmacist for advice, and from drugs to just over the counter. And I remember that, and it's a very warm feeling for me. And when Laura was sharing with you about her sister-in-laws, I thought, there is something special, whether it's done, over Zoom or it's in person, to have that pharmacist with all the knowledge that pharmacists have, as you know, being one yourself, can really just be of amazing, not only help, but trust to consumers.
Yeah, think about it. When was the last time you walked into your lawyer's office and just started asking questions without an appointment? Never. Or your doctor. Pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare professionals out there. And that's been almost to the profession's detriment, because they've just been literally trying to help everyone and not worrying about, hey, these services might actually be valuable, right? Coupled with, the pharmacists are always trying to get provider status under, Medicare and things like that. Well, I don't think we need some magical title in order to start billing for our cognitive services. And, I think about my own parents as an adult child trying to take care of them. When I need somebody's attention, I'd like it undivided. And you can't do that rolling into a retail pharmacy these days, because the pharmacist is so multitasking that you're never going to get just a 30-minute deep conversation about the 15 medications that your adult parent is on and whether or not they even need to be on them in the first place, because they're so distracted. So I think, it's really ripe. It's a ripe time to have these bifurcation discussions. And believe me, there's a whole camp that was very firm on wrapping products with services. And I still believe there's a place for that. Legally, there's still a place for that on each individual prescription. But when we've got polypharmacy going on and, potential drug-drug interactions, especially with the elderly, should they even be on those medications, the only way to really do it right is to have that thoughtful one-on-one conversation.
So I know two people who are, they've got the doctor by subscription plan. So they go in, they're paying a flat fee, going to see the doctor. Now, Erin, do you think that's sort of the model of the future, or is that just a high-priced HMO?
I think you're talking about concierge medicine, right?
Yes. Yeah, call it, yes.
Yes, ironically, I lost my own general practitioner, my internal med doc, to concierge medicine recently. So it's I'm kind of split on that topic, right? Because on one hand, she called me personally and said, "Look, my company is telling me I've got to take on 500 to 1,000 more patients if I want to stay in my current practice, or I can cut back on my practice and go to concierge and see 1,000 less patients." And I'm like, good for you that you figured out that it's going to be better for your quality of life to go that route versus, the model where it's just still fee for service. Let's see as many patients as we can as quickly as possible. Concierge pharmacy is already here, believe it or not. There's pockets of it. There's programs out there that are, focused on cognitive services. It's kind of word of mouth. It's still kind of grassroots. I would like to see more of that, amongst a network. Independent pharmacists out there are really doing a great job in specific arenas, whether it be long-term care for, older patients, or compounding as a niche, or pet medications, or whatever the case may be. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I just would love to see more and more of that over time. The challenge is, while we at Cost Plus Drugs are very lucky to have Mr. Cuban backing us, the independent pharmacist doesn't have that luxury, right? So how can we help support those pharmacists as well? And that's a personal passion of mine, trying to figure out how Cost Plus could potentially partner with these smaller pharmacies that are serving unmet needs in the community. So that's on the docket for, discussion as we grow over time too. We're not there today, but we might be there in the future.
It's a good segue to
okay.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Joseph.
Sorry. So years ago, I worked for a telemedicine company in the eye care space, and they were so disruptive to the industry that the lobby was so strong, basically that company ended up going out of business. Not giving the credit to the lobby, but there was a lot of pushback, right? So clearly there's disruption now in the retail pharmacy business. You just alluded to like how you could help the local pharmacist. Is there a pushback from the industry to what Cost Plus is doing?
Oh, I'm sure we're not super popular with some larger pharmacies out there, but also we're still talking to, in my personal opinion, really good chain pharmacies out there that want to work with us as well. But my heart is always going to be a little bit with the independents, because they're kind of filling the gaps where no one else will in those rural communities or underserved communities. We kind of like to be the Switzerland of pharmacy in a lot of ways, in that, we'll partner with anyone if it helps the bottom line and helping patients get access to the vital medications that they need. So patients aren't making those hard choices between rent, food, and drugs. Mr. Cuban talks about that all the time, which I love that, because people in the best country on the planet, in my opinion, of all time, we should not be having these major challenges with our millions of Americans who don't have the luxury of commercial insurance. So anytime that we're, in a conversation to help get access and affordable medications that are safe to patients, we're all in on that. Whoever is on the other side of the table or in the room with us having that conversation.
Okay, so Erin, help me be a smarter purchaser of prescription drugs. I'm a lazy customer. You can probably tell I don't really, based on the questions I've asked you. So I go in, doctor says, okay, I've got a prescription. We're sending this into your pharmacy on file. What should I do differently? What are the steps I should take if they said, here's what we want you to take? Where and how should I come to your site? What do I do differently with my physician?
So you need to ask your physician some questions before just nodding your head and saying, okay, doc, whatever you think. The first question I always ask is this the most affordable, lowest cost option in the therapeutic area that I can take at this point? And if it's not, let's talk about the range of options and whether or not we can find the most affordable option. Can I take the most affordable option at this time? It kind of depends on what kind of insurance you have, too, as to what your questions should be, because I personally think everybody should go to their open enrollment meetings, which I myself wasn't the best employee about that in the past, but now I am. Go to open enrollment, ask for a copy of your drug formulary so you know exactly what drugs are where on the formulary, or even if they're on the formulary. The other list of drugs that you need to take a look at is your Affordable Care Act mandatory preventative drugs, because those are covered at $0. And a lot of people don't even know that list of drugs exists. I'm not sure the PBMs even want to talk about that, but a lot of drug lists are segregated sometimes for the Affordable Care Act from your drug formulary. So, for example, a lot of the ACA mandated drugs in many plans include things like statins. So you can get your statins for free, potentially, or any kind of vaccines, or contraceptives in some instances. There's bowel prep for your colonoscopy. A lot of people don't even realize that they can get those drugs for free under the ACA mandated list. But you got to be savvy enough to ask the questions about where is this mandated list. The last question that I would think about when I'm at open enrollment, long before I went and saw my doc, was asking about whether or not there is a process by which, if I paid cash for a prescription, where I could submit that receipt to be included in my deductible and out-of-pocket amounts at a minimum. Most plans are not going to talk about that either, because they want you to stay under the plan parameters. But if you use a site like Cost Plus Drugs, where it's significantly lower cost, sometimes even lower than your own copay, you want to use that, but you also want it to apply to your deductible and out-of-pocket. Most plans have a form that you can fill out and submit with your receipt, and they will apply it to your deductible and out-of-pocket, but you got to ask the hard questions around that, because they will not bring it up. A good broker advisor, by the way, will do that for you. But those are the kinds of things that I would ask. A lot of major carriers also have apps on their, for smartphones that are worth downloading, because they'll include a copy of the drug formulary on it. And you want that when you go to your doctor, so you can show him or her what's tier 1 on your formulary, what's tier 2, what's going to be an unreasonable copay or coinsurance. Do you have to pay 20% coinsurance on a specialty drug that might cost you $10,000 a month? I would want to know that before I rolled over to the pharmacy and picked it up, right? So I think even before you go see your doctor, you should go to open enrollment, understand from your advisor broker all the benefits that you have available to you, and become a student of those. So when you go do see your doctor, you can have an intelligent conversation about which drugs might be lowest cost, most effective, and covered on your plan.
That was great. That was incredibly useful. I didn't even know this was in the documents. I didn't know how this worked. Joseph, why didn't you tell me?
I didn't even know there was a Affordable Care Act list. So there you go.
All right. Last question, thoughts? I don't know, Joseph?
I think this was enlightening, because we all just learned something, and we're in this business, so I can only imagine what our listeners are picking up, if it's going to be useful for a lot of folks.
Yeah. Mary?
I guess the big takeaway is question your drugs.
Exactly. Ask questions.
Ask questions. It's okay.
Hey, Mary, what about you? Sorry, Mary, you're on mute. I'll cut this out. Can you try this?
I'm blown away by what you shared, and I think there's so many consumers that would really want to know this information. And I love the work that you are doing with Mark Cuban and his company, because you're really looking out for those individuals who, again, as you said earlier, are trying to make decisions about, whether they can buy food or drugs. And so this information is just amazing. So again, I've learned so much today.
Laura?
It's my favorite question. In a brief few sentences, Erin, what is your why? Why do you wake up every day and do this?
Probably because I've been that retail pharmacist and watched people count their pennies to pay, which is, again, ridiculous in our great country. And I get a little teary about this because it's always been a passion of mine to make sure that people don't have to make those tough choices.
Yeah. You've said it, it's like, how many people have we known who haven't taken drugs? They've missed and they haven't had the person advocating for them. So, yeah, thank you, Erin. Seriously, thank you for what you're doing with your group. I think.
Sorry for the Hallmark moment, but I get fired up about this.
No, it's
we all
Are
do.
you kidding?
It's
great.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we want to be doing, and we want a life. I think we all want lives of purpose, and you see people on the streets, and you think, how are we? How do we do this as a country? Why do we have these tents of people that, it's. I think the answer is going to be like one step at a time with people like you, right? And businesses like
Whenever
that.
I have a bad day, whenever I think it's one step forward, 25 back, I just go out to Twitter and I look at the people we're helping, and then I get my butt back to work.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to all have to go on Twitter now and thank Erin.
You should. Cost Plus Drugs. Follow us at Cost Plus Drugs. Go to costplusdrugs.com. We're there. We're here to help. We're on Facebook, too, and Instagram.
Okay. Good. Listen, we'll put all links in. Links
Perfect.
to your books, your shows. We've got your link tree. We'll put that in. And
Great.
hey, thanks for your time. Thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for your team. And listen, hopefully we can come back and have another conversation in 6 months, and you'll be boy, who knows what will have happened with your companies by then.
It's great to think about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank you.
Thanks so much.